Welcome to the Mostly All Figured Out podcast with your host, Emily Rose. Regardless of the career field, the lifestyle, everyone is mostly figuring it all out. This podcast is where we pull back the veil of perfection and share true stories, experiences, encouragement, and of course failures, detailing how people just like you are making it all happen, despite the uncertainty, the fear, the imposter syndrome, the setbacks, the shame, whatever it is. If you believe there is more for you than what your life looks like right now, you're in the right place. Let's figure out our next steps together. Now let's get into the episode. And here we go. Okay. Welcome back to the Mostly All Figured Out podcast. I am your host, Emily Louie. We are back in the virtual office today. And before I start, I am going to do what I forgot to do the last time. I'm so sorry to my friends at Free Street, but we are recording. I'm being very careful with the Free Street Tavern mic. This mic is a great mic. It has caused me some issues, some technical difficulties over the last 3 episodes, but that's okay because we're figuring it out. We're mostly figuring it all out here. And I think we did figure it out. Look, we moved this and it's not disconnecting like the last time I tried to do it. This is probably really fun for people to listen to. But this mic is sponsored by Free Street Tavern. Thank you so much, Free Street. We love you. It's the best dive, cocktail, sports, neighborhood, good people bar that you will find in Buffalo. Hands down. In fact, I need to go pay them a visit. I haven't been there in a minute. So check it out. It's on Niagara Street. It's great. Josh, you really need to give me some words if you want. Like, if there's something specific, let me know. But I did it. Here you go. We love it. So today, we're going to start our episode. Today, I'm very happy and excited to have a guest here. And I should have asked you for like an official title, but I went to your website and I loved this. So today, everyone get excited. We have Buffalo's leading Āyurvedic practitioner for natural PMS and period pain relief in the house here. So thank you for joining me. I am super excited. And her name is Dr. Sam Attard. That is correct, right? Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm so glad. I'm so excited. I learned of you from my friend, who is your friend as well, Alex Hamburger.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentioned you and was like, oh yeah, you should really talk to Sam. Like, she would be an interesting person to have on the podcast. And here we are. So this is great.
Thank you, Alex. That's so nice.
I know, he's the best, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
I love him. So first of all, let me just preface to any men who are listening to this. Sorry, we will be talking about periods today. But we won't entirely be talking about periods. We'll be talking about a few different things. But it's a natural bodily function, and half the population has it. So
I will say, and I know you have sons as well, one of my greatest joys is talking to my son about periods, because it's so wonderful to witness him like just sort of thinking it's a pretty normal thing that just happens to women, and is like, oh, okay, that's cool. And it's really like a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, let's start there. I didn't even think about that. So you have one son, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's 4 years old.
4. Okay, so my boys are 8 and 3. And I've never shied away from the conversation. Like, they'll notice, and so then they'll be like, what's going on here? And I'm like, yep, this is something that happens to mommies and to girls all the time. You don't have to have that. And they're always like, oh, that's great. I'm like, yeah, good for you. But I'm probably not talking to them about it in maybe the most effective way. So how do you talk to your son about it?
I think the biggest thing is that I talk about it as if it's completely normal, so that it's also not even, oh, lucky you don't have to deal with it. It's just, oh, it happens to girls, not to boys. Boys have penises, girls don't, and we have periods, you don't, and that's just something we do. And, I don't shy away from oh yeah, these are mom's pads. Oh yeah, this is something that I do when I have my period. When I have my period, maybe I sleep a little bit later, or I might eat a little bit differently. And so I just say, oh yeah, it's just because of my period. And so sort of normalizing all the pieces around it and letting it
Mm-hmm.
just be a normal thing that happens.
Yeah.
It was such a beautiful experience. One day we were shopping at Little Salmon, to shout out one of my favorite stores in
Love
Buffalo.
Little
And
Salmon and
they have
Tracy.
I know they have some reusable underwear for periods, and the period underwear. And like, it was such a wonderful moment of like, my son would be like, what is that? What are those stuff? And I say, oh, it's just period underwear. And he's like, oh, okay. And just sort of walked on his way. And it was really cool. It felt really good.
Yeah, that must have been a really proud moment for you.
Mm-hmm.
I love
Well,
that.
it's interesting though, because of like the social norms that we have. I was almost sort of wary of what other people might think of, oh my gosh, might other people think it's weird that I'm, talking to my 4-year-old son about periods, and that he thinks it's totally normal. But, once I sort of got over that, I was like, this is great. This is wonderful. Mm-hmm.
This is really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think that's a common parent problem. I'm trying to think of a situation. I've definitely had this situation before where you hear them say something and it's like, oh, no, I mean, it's good that but how? I don't, I think that happens pretty often. Like, I can think of a situation. It was with my sister. I was with my sister. It was a couple years ago. And we took our kids to Churn on Hurdle for ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lesbian couple there with a child. And that's right. And my niece like looked at them and was like, "Are you guys boys?" And my sister and I both were like, we couldn't breathe. But this couple was so receptive and like talked to her, and we're like, no, we're not. I know we look a certain way, but everybody looks different. And just because, we're girls doesn't mean we have to look a certain way. This is what we look like. And so my niece Zoe was like, oh, okay, cool. And then we all just moved on. But I think, I don't think we should shy away from moments like that. I think it's such a great learning opportunity. And as long as everyone comes at it from a place, and of course, children are just coming at it from a place of like curiosity and innocence for the most part. So I think if we as adults can also treat it that way, that's such a good thing.
There's something beautiful about that. And my son and I have been having a little bit the conversation around not talking about how people look. Like the other day on the street, another random example, he's, how come his legs are so skinny? And you're like, okay, like, and
Yes.
just that we don't comment on other people's bodies. That's not something that we need to do. Of course, if you have questions, we can talk about it. But just to say that it's not it's just not polite conversation, I guess. But
yeah.
so now I'm like going back on it of what is good conversation or not.
That's so true. I know. I know.
But in general, right? Like they always talk about that of, how are you talking about your own body and how your kid is going to kind of pick that up, and sort of weaving that into, curiosity, openness. Yeah, that's what his legs look like. Everyone has different legs. Isn't that cool? And just letting it slide away.
Yeah.
Just interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's an art form. It's an art form figuring out how to parent, period.
Oh my God, yes.
So let's get some background from you. Are you from Buffalo?
Indeed. Yeah, I was born in Kenmore. Mm-hmm.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. And did you have any siblings?
Yeah, 2 sisters, older sister and younger.
Middle child. What was that like for you?
At age 12, I printed off from AOL.com a piece of paper that, like, because there was some article on AOL.com about what your age, like what your birth order means about you. And it was the one that basically said that the middle child is going to be messed up. They're not going to feel loved. And you really got to worry about the middle child. And I printed it off and handed it to my parents. I said, see, like, I need some extra attention.
I have proof. This is the evidence. I've done my research.
AOL,
It's
yep,
facts.
AOL.com told me, like, it was on the homepage, which is obviously a very important thing. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
so I struggle a
reputable.
little bit with the middle child thing, but now I'm into it. I like it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's benefits. Wait, what's your birth order?
I'm number one.
You're
First
number
first of
one.
9. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, I mean, the benefit of being in the middle is that, you can go high or go low. Like you can kind of hang with the older kids, but you can also play with the littler kids. Like it just can kind of toggle those two. And
Yeah.
that's been a nice perk of being the middle kid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still close with your family now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, my parents still live in Kenmore. One of my sisters lives in Kenmore. The other one lives actually in Las Vegas, but we have a good time. It was sort of a nice thing. It was pretty, like, probably by the time I turned 14 or 15, we kind of all just became a little bit of a club, and it's like, okay, yeah, we've got this, and so we just laugh and talk for hours, and it's a good
I
thing.
love that. I
Yeah,
love
it
that.
does feel really
I
good.
love like I said, I'm the oldest and I have 8 younger siblings, and so they're all becoming adults now or already are. And I love seeing how our relationships are evolving, and also how we're all prioritizing our relationships with each other now
Mhm.
different, like not even differently, whereas like we just weren't before.
Yeah.
I think as you get older and your friend groups start to not wind down or like weed out, but like they get a little bit tighter as we get
Hmm.
older because we have so many more responsibilities, and our time and opportunities to hang out with people are just so much fewer. um and so I think we all just kind of get to a point where we look around at our siblings and know that no matter what, whether you talk to them or see them once a week or once a year, they're always going to be there. And so it's just, and no matter what you say or do, I mean, of course, there are some things that you could say or do that might result in not having that connection anymore. But for the most part, you can mess up or you can miss something, and you're still, that relationship will always just be intact and always be there. So there's something really special about it.
It is beautiful, and it definitely, there's rewriting that has to happen for sure,
Yeah.
of getting out of old patterns. And we had a wonderful actual experience in December. My grandfather passed, and at his
I'm sorry.
funeral, and to not tell the whole long story, basically post funeral, the 5 of us shoved into like a regular sized small car, and my older sister is crying and saying, "I'm sorry, I got so triggered," and we're talking about something that happened when we were 8 or 10, and like how this moment brought it up. And I'm like, "I'm so sorry, like, obviously that wasn't intentional, and I'm sorry that you felt that way." And we were all able to talk about our experience of this moment as well as the 8-year-old moment, and there was this like beautiful healing that happened, and it was like, "Oh, this is cool. Okay, that was great." But
Yeah.
it's taken a road to get there, and
Yeah.
required that reconfiguring, and that saying, "Okay, hold on a second. I am an adult here. I'm not the 8-year-old. So what can like adult me understand about this situation that 8-year-old me could not understand about this situation?"
Let's go back to your career. How did you this is not something that I think, as a 3-year-old you were like, I'm going to do that one day. How did you how did you end up doing this? What got you started?
Yeah. Um, it's like, which version of the story, because it's gonna be so long and winding. Because in some ways, it totally starts from when I was 3 and 5 and 6 and 9.
Mm,
But basically, really not fun digestive issues growing up, which turned into menstruation issues through high school. I did some changes with diet and felt effects, and felt like, oh, things got better. My mom bought like the Zone Diet book or something when I was in 10th or 11th grade, and we were all like, oh, like I feel better. This is pretty cool. So that started the interest in nutrition, and the idea that nutrition could actually have an effect on how we feel and how our body systems are working. And also in high school, I went to Narden, and like around exam time, they brought in Himalayan Institute to do yoga, like to like relax us and calm us down. And in one of these yoga classes, like just in the gym, I was like, this is the best thing ever. Like, hold on a second, I love this. And I started practicing yoga every day at home with like a random podcast. And when I was in college, one of my yoga teachers mentioned Ayurveda. And
Mm.
Ayurveda is, they call it the sister science to yoga. It came out of the same lineage. It's over 5,000 years old. And it's
Wow.
the ancient Indian system of medicine and healing. And it spoke to me so clearly because one of the aspects of Ayurveda is personalization, that we're not all the same, that we need different things. And uh, and suddenly,
Mm.
we were talking about family, right? Uh, and how we're like this little club. And it was like, well, we're this little club, except Sam has a really sensitive stomach, so she can't keep up with the rest of you.
Mm.
So, and suddenly it was like this moment of like, wait, this is why I really struggle with some foods, and this is why I need a full night's sleep, or else I'm going to just be a mess the next day. And this is why, like, I'm a little more sensitive to sounds and bright lights, and like I'm like happier, a little bit quieter. And it just resonated so deeply. And that,
Wow.
yeah, and so it made me just dive into this world of Ayurveda. uh, and and I just kept learning more and reading more and realizing what a like powerful science it was. um, but of course, fear gremlins come in.
Mm-hmm.
Around this time that I was graduating from college, it was in the middle of the recession in like 2009, 2010. And so I was like, I bet you Western nutrition has learned some stuff in the last 5,000 years. Like, I cannot imagine that Ayurveda really has the answer. So I went to go get a PhD in nutrition because I still thought
Mm.
nutrition was so important. But I was wondering, what have we learned? What can modern nutrition tell us?
Sure.
And I remember one day sitting in class, and I just started laughing because we were talking about these studies, these interventions that people were doing for obesity. And every time they did an intervention for obesity, so something that they were going to try to do to help people lose weight, every single time they did it, 33% of the people got better, 33% of the people had no change, and 33% of the people got worse.
Oh,
And I
wow.
laughed because this is exactly the Ayurvedic doshas. We have three doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, these three ways of sort of understanding people and understanding the world around us. And it completely makes sense that if you give the same drug or the same prescription, even a lifestyle prescription, to up to a Vata, a Pitta, and a Kapha, one of them's going to respond, one of them's going to be okay but not great, and one of them's going to have more problems. And it was in that
Wow.
class that I said, okay, actually, we've actually forgotten a lot because we're still trying to find the one miracle drug or the one miracle cure for all of the health issues that people are experiencing. And
Yeah.
so, as I finished my PhD, I moved straight away into coaching on nutrition and health and continued my Ayurveda studies. Um, and sort of haven't looked back. I think it's been almost a decade that I've been doing that. Uh, and the focus on women's health, I mean, that can be a whole other story, but obviously some of it came out of my personal experience, um, and have always had an interest in women's health. I've thought about being a midwife and did doula training, and I just have always been interested in this like, beautiful thing that does not feel very beautiful most of the time. Uh,
Yeah.
so so that's how I ended up doing what I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have so many questions for you. Okay. So first thing is, why do you have any thoughts on why, something that was so clearly like, even when you went to school to find out, to learn the
Yeah.
modern version, the Western version, why do you think it is that we've lost the practice of Ayurveda
Yeah.
when there's so many things that show that it's a good practice to have to be a healthy human? What do you think happened that
Yeah.
caused most of the modern world to have no understanding of this?
Yeah, well, we know what happens, and first, just that reminder that Ayurveda wrote the first book of surgery. Traditional Chinese medicine came out of Ayurveda. It said that Hippocrates was influenced by Ayurveda, so it's there in all of our medical systems, and really at the root of it. But we know the reason why it's not widely practiced today, and that's because of colonization. So when
Right.
the English came into India, they sorry to be harsh, but they started killing all the Ayurvedic doctors. It
Wow.
was part of their assimilation campaign, and it's actually mm, like thank you to all of those Ayurvedic doctors that kind of went underground and kept this tradition alive for all of those years.
Yeah.
And so that's why, even when we compare it to something like traditional Chinese medicine, we don't see it nearly as much. And it's just starting to really come into our, Western world and our Western awareness, because it wasn't until, 50s and 60s that the Vaidyas, the Ayurvedic doctors, were able to even practice openly again. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this isn't my first time hearing about Ayurveda. I think probably the first time was I was reading a book by Deepak Chopra when I was pregnant
Yes.
with my second child. Yeah, and so, he obviously talks a lot about that, and I tried doing some of the practices when I was pregnant with him. But even I'll see some, Instagram influencers talking about it, like Jay Shetty. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yes.
him. His
Mm-hmm.
wife, she is, and I can't remember her name now, which is so terrible because I love her, but she does a lot of Ayurvedic practices and she shares them. And she has a cookbook now that probably has, incorporates a lot of that as well. And Gabby Bernstein, I think, talks about
Mm-hmm.
Ayurvedic practices as well. So this is something that I've always been really interested in. And I, deal with autoimmune issues myself. And so this is something I've always been curious about, but didn't fully know where to start. So, like, how do you figure out what your dosha is?
Yeah, there's lots of beautiful quizzes on the internet,
Cool.
which yeah, which is just an easy and fun and simple way to get an understanding of what the doshas are. I think it's easier to sort of see it in yourself and to kind of map these different qualities, whether it's something about your body shape and your body type, or the way you typically digest food, or the typical symptoms you experience.
Mm,
Um, that can be a really nice way to just start to dive a little deeper into what's going on with Ayurveda.
hmm.
But I think it's also important though to not get hyper focused on the doshas, because even if we don't have that full understanding, there's so much to be learned just from an Ayurvedic schedule. The Sanskrit word is dinacharya. But if you look up, the Ayurvedic clock or an Ayurvedic schedule, you can learn so much just about general ways to find balance and rhythm in your days,
Mm,
and it it's really life changing.
yeah. So it sounds like a lot of it is really just being in tune with your body and with nature and living according to it, which is also kind of, so another thing that I've been learning a lot about, and I wanted to mention this because we actually were meant to record this podcast a week ago,
Yes.
and maybe a couple days before, you just rescheduled and said, I'm menstruating right now, and so I'm a little bit cloudy. I would love to move this a week so that I can think more clearly while doing this. And I love that so much because I've also been learning a lot about cyclical living,
Mm-hmm.
both with the, for women who are in their period, but also with the moon and
Mm-hmm.
the phases of the moon. And is that something that you have, you know, maybe not so much cyclical living, but like being aware of how you feel through the full menstruation process? Like, do you schedule things according to what your period looks like?
Yeah, so much goodness there. So first off, that cyclical living, well, first to say, it's in tune with yourself, but it is 100% in tune with nature. The beauty of
Yeah.
Ayurveda is that it is about the rhythms of nature, and the fact that if you really, really, if you like kind of think about it, all of the patterns that exist on the macrocosm are repeated on the microcosm. So for example, we have our 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, winter.
Mm-hmm.
That actually looks a lot like the sun rises. We have the midday sun that's hot, that's like summer. It starts to come
Mm-hmm.
to evening, it's cooler, and then it's the night, like the winter. It's
Yeah.
like a life, right? When we're little, like, there's, well, besides the fact that we're all like wet and mucusy, if you think of toddlers, like we're growing and changing, and then we're in our 30s and 40s, and we're like running around like sometimes like wackos, which is our
Yeah.
summer, and then things start to quiet down, and then there's death, right? The moon phase goes from nothing to grow, grow, grow. It's full, and then it wanes. So these rhythms are everywhere.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
same pattern shows up again and again. So it's about aligning ourselves to these patterns. So I just want to say that it goes beyond like, I don't really feel like doing that today.
Right.
It goes beyond some of that to really like what is actually happening in the moment.
Yeah.
So menstruation and the menstrual cycle follows this same pattern. A spring, when things are growing, right? This is after you finish menstruation, the lining of the uterus is starting to build. The eggs in your ovaries are starting to grow and mature, and then ovulation happens. There's summer. This egg is released to go down the fallopian tube. We start to move into fall, where on the one hand, there's like, I almost think of like a fall harvest, right? Our progesterone increases. We get a little juicier, for lack of a better term, but then things start to fall, because if the egg isn't fertilized in the uterus, then all of our hormones start to drop and everything gets prepared for menstruation. And then there's the winter. Menstruation comes, we're tired, we're more depleted, we don't have as much energy as we do at other times of the month. So that menstrual cycle follows that same pattern that I was speaking to. And yes, I do try to align some of my actions to that menstrual cycle.
I love
I
that.
don't take it as far as some people, in that I don't say like you need to buy completely different food every week of your cycle, or you have to do completely different workouts every week of your cycle. Like that to me is actually more jarring than it is supportive.
Hmm.
But those small actions, those small things we can do to balance, like, I'm going to menstruate tomorrow. Is it really the night to go out until 2 a.m.? Probably not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Mm-hmm.
our example, I do know, and it's actually a Western science proven fact, that we speak less clearly. We have less recall of our words when we're menstruating. And so if I want to speak clearly, if I want to get my point across, probably not the best time to be recording a podcast, besides the fact that speaking is actually one of the highest energy activities that we do. And so, all of that speaking and that upward motion can disrupt the downward motion of menstruation. So small
Wow.
actions that I do to work it in, and it does really make a difference.
That's really cool. There's something so appealing about that, about the idea of paying attention to your cycle. I'm all about efficiency. I love efficiency. I love scheduling things. I
Yeah.
love, and so if we can connect that to with how our body feels, to have an effective schedule, like I know that when I am on my period and I have meetings all week, I just dread it. Oh, I
Yes.
hate that. I just look at
Yeah.
it and I'm like, this is going to be rough. So when I have the opportunity, I put it in my calendar and I removed it, but I should do it again. I put it in my Google Calendar
Yeah.
when my like estimated period will come, so that I can see that when I am scheduling meetings with people
Totally.
and try to avoid it. Sometimes you can't, of course. Like we all have jobs and responsibilities and children and sports activities and all of that. But when I can, it just feels not only like I'm being super efficient and making the most of my time, but also like I'm giving myself love and prioritizing both my physical and emotional wellness.
It's so true. And there is something that is so empowering in that. And it's not just the, like there's this little culture of like, just say no, like just cancel the plans, ha ha ha. And it's not
Yeah.
that. It's not that like it's all about saying no.
Yeah.
One of my teachers, she says, it's always a good time for something. And that's sort of the beautiful
Mm.
piece is that
Hmm.
sure, if last week wasn't a good time to schedule a podcast, actually this week is a great one to schedule a podcast. So great. I'm
Hmm.
so glad we're here. If that
Yeah.
week isn't a good one to stay out until 2 a.m., there's another week where it's a great idea to stay out. Well, moderately great idea, right?
Right.
Depends on where you're at. But we're actually, you'll have the energy, you'll have the stamina, you'll be excited to be there versus, like you said, sort of being in the dread mode because it's not what your body needs at that time.
Right. And also, if we truly take advantage of our winter, of our body's winter, and we slow things down and intentionally rest, then we're even better prepared for the podcast and the going out and the, whatever else we have the next week too.
100%. And then, I'll say I notice it in my body. I tend to, the time that I most often get sick or, start to feel the sniffles is in that day or two after I stop menstruating,
Hmm.
particularly if I haven't slowed down enough, right? Because I've depleted myself. Now I'm more susceptible to other, insults in the environment and more susceptible to that. So
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So how do you get client? Well, okay. Come up with your question, Emily.
Mhm.
When you work with clients, what does that look like? And how do you get most of your clients? Is it through word of mouth? I will say your Instagram is fantastic. You are a professional Instagrammer. I'm like, I need to be more like Dr. Sam because it's really good. So
Oh,
applause for
God.
that.
Thank you. At Spiro Collective, if anyone's listening.
Yes.
Um,
We will link to it in the show notes. Make sure you
thank,
follow.
thank you. Thanks, because my goodness, does it take time?
Mhm.
Thank you. Yeah, most of my clients come through. I guess there is ultimately a lot of word of mouth, and then some through Instagram. Old, like not old, but I teach yoga classes, and so it's been folks that have maybe come through a studio or come through workshops or just been around in the ecosystem for a while. Um, Internet search. I do most of my work virtually, and it's been something I want to change. I want to do more work with the folks of Buffalo because I think there's a lot of menstrual issues in Buffalo, for just to keep it simply. Um,
Hmm.
and but I do most of that work virtually, and how it looks is it typically starts with what I call a health clarity session, and it's 90 minutes where we really dive deep into everything that's going on in your body and in your mind. And that's the beauty of Ayurveda, is we look at it holistically. Everything affects everything. So we're
Hmm.
looking at how you do feel about your job and what is going on in your relationships. And by the way, do your hands get cold? And have you noticed brittle nails recently? And, like we look at all of these different aspects of you to create a comprehensive picture. And what I get to hand over in that health clarity session is, all of those random symptoms that you thought you had, and that you're like, why do I have 45 different things that are wrong with me? Actually, here's the one cause. Like, here's actually the
Yeah.
one thing that's manifesting in all of those 40 different ways. And here's how I think we would go about changing that and addressing that. And so we're giving some of those first um, ways to balance so that you actually can understand, yes, I have a lot of pitta dosha or vata dosha, and I really need to work on the strength of my digestion. And if I get those two under control, all of these symptoms are going to shift. So that's a way that we start, and then I'll meet ongoing with folks to actually put those plans into action and create, what am I going to eat in a day? How do I want to move my body? What does my morning routine look like? How do I sleep better? We just go day, like part by part, addressing those different aspects of your day to bring more balance.
That's awesome.
It's
Now I
fun.
have I have to go back to what you said before about Buffalo having a lot of menstrual
Yeah.
issues. So what
Yeah.
did you mean by that?
I meant that besides the fact that we know women in Buffalo, we have very high rates of autoimmune thyroid conditions, um, and very high hysterectomy rates. And some of that comes out of, the mindset of performing the surgeries, but it's also because people are having problems in the first place. Um, so I would love to prevent some of those hysterectomies, because it's such a huge surgery. It's not an easy surgery, and it creates it affects you for the rest of your life.
La da da dee da 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 da. This is my intermission music because I haven't made any yet, but I will. It's coming. I needed to interrupt this episode to say, if you're watching this on YouTube, you've already seen we've had some technical difficulties. About 15 minutes in, Dr. Sam and I had to turn our videos off because they kept shutting off for some reason, or it kept freezing. And so for the rest of this episode, you will not see us again. If you are watching on YouTube, you will continue to see this little scrunch nose picture of me and graphic. But if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts, you also now noticed some weird things happening with audio. I don't know what was going on. Something, not today, Satan. He was trying to keep us from talking about periods, I guess. But something was happening with my mic. It just stopped. It just stopped recording. So I was stupid because I'm mostly all figured out, and we're learning. We are learning 53 episodes and still learning. And so I did not think to record my voice on my phone until the last 5 minutes that remain. So from this point in the episode until the last 5 minutes, I'm going to try to guess what I said in between. Or I don't know. I haven't edited yet, so we're on this journey together. Or I might just cut me out completely for the next 20 minutes of the episode and have you listen to Dr. Sam's answers as long as they make sense. So we'll see. But I hope you're enjoying this episode as much as I enjoyed talking with Dr. Sam. She's incredible. Obviously, she's dropped so much amazing realness in this episode, and I'm just so grateful to her for it. So continue listening, please. But it is going to be I'm going to try and make it as smooth of a ride as possible. And it is going to sound a little fuzzy at the end when my phone recording jumps in. So thanks for listening. Don't give up. It's good. You need this. Okay, bye. Back to the episode.
I went through the Buffalo medical system all through, high school and college, dealing with menstrual issues, and no one gave answers. Right? Everyone said, oh, whoopsies, yeah, that sucks. Or oh, yeah, I guess we could give you a birth control pill or something. Or, oh, I don't know. I had a surgery for an ovarian cyst that probably, maybe it did, maybe it didn't need to actually be, handled with surgery. But it's really frustrating that there's no actual answers, just medications and surgery. And the beauty of Ayurveda and why it was so life-changing for me was this idea of actually understanding the cause behind it. A really simple example is period pain, right? And period cramps. We just sort of write it off as this is just part of the deal. But and I don't know why you have period problems, and period cramps, but actually we completely know period cramps equals tension in your uterus. If there's not tension in the uterus, and if the lining of the uterus can be expelled easily, there's no cramps. So there's so many things we can do to help get rid of that tension and to make the blood be expelled easily. And that's wonderful. That's possible, but that's not what we hear. We don't hear that that's actually the reason and the cause, and that there's a very clear way to prevent that.
Can you share some impact stories or some results that you have seen in your clients who have started working with you? What are some of the things that you've seen happen after folks who have uteruses have come to you looking for support?
Sure. I mean, I think of, a woman who was experiencing early menopause and we reversed it. So she started menstruating again. And that was pretty amazing because she was 44, 45 and didn't want to be in menopause. So that was a pretty big win. And, other clients who were taking, another client that was taking birth control pills because of how awful her periods were. They were really, really heavy and painful, and just she was taking days off of work every month. And we made a lot of changes in her diet and her lifestyle, and then she was able to come off of birth control pills and now experiences pretty much pain-free periods. Like it was, yeah, it was like she went on vacation to the beach when she had her period. Like that was a big, huge win. That was like such a big win. Um, yeah, helping women lengthen out short periods. So had a woman that was, getting her period every 20, 21 days. Nothing was lengthening it out. And we're still working on it. She's at 24, but the fact that she couldn't move it at all for years and that we've increased it by 3 or 4 days is huge. And then I want to keep going because it is so beautiful when you actually sort of when you reflect and look at it of being able to stop medications, whether it's hormonal birth control or for headaches or taking antibiotics all the time because they're getting UTIs or bacterial vaginosis. It does make a big difference in the quality of life, especially thinking of the client that got off of hormonal birth control. She's like, my brain feels back. Like I feel happier than I did. And that's huge. Like that's so huge. That's your everyday quality of life. So it's a really beautiful thing. It's fun.
It's really amazing the impact that you are having on real people's lives and
Thanks.
thinking about the chain reaction that this helping them in this area of their life must have on all the other areas of their lives and their in their relationships with others and how they show up in the world and just everything. So thank you for sharing those. Switching gears a little bit, how can those of us who are interested in learning more about Ayurveda and Ayurvedic practices, how do we get started? What habits do you think, even those who aren't interested in diving fully in, what are good Ayurvedic practices that you think everyone should incorporate into their daily lives?
Oh my gosh, there's like so many beautiful ones to choose from, but I'll because it's on my mind today. Looking at hydration, not drinking water or other things, just not drinking a lot of liquids during your meals or for the hour after you eat. So yeah. So it's so funny, but reducing the amount that you're drinking, or when you're drinking a lot, I should say, when you're drinking a lot during your meal, you're basically diluting the stomach acid and making it harder for you to digest your food. And when you start drinking whatever you're drinking in that hour after eating, think about it. Your stomach is like this closed little container that's trying to churn up your food. And then every 30 seconds, you're trying to open up the container and you're basically interrupting its job every 30 seconds. And so it's a small thing, but it can help you digest your food so much better, which ultimately has you feeling better energy, less bloated, getting better nutrition from the food that you eat. You feel more full, and more satisfied. It's a small change that can make a very big difference. When you wake up in the morning, before you get out of bed, say thank you to something, whatever you want to say thank you to. Say thank you to something that you're waking up here you are alive on this earth at this moment. And that's just, it's such an important one to bring in perspective to your day. And I know so many people who dread waking up in the morning, especially on work days, and waking up and just taking a moment to say thank you. Okay. And then getting yourself out of bed is so huge. It really sets a different tone for your day, instead of, spending the first 20 minutes of your day kind of hitting snooze, kind of scrolling Instagram, kind of like wishing you didn't have to get up, right? Like, think like that's priming your day for feeling sluggish, for feeling in resistance, versus priming your day for feeling like, I'm here, I choose to be here, and I'm going to do something with my day.
I love that you said that, because this is something we hear all the time about how important having some kind of gratitude practice is, especially first thing in the morning. I talk about this with my best friend. Shout out Maria. You're getting a little shout out on the podcast. She listens to every single episode. I love her so much. But Maria and I talk about this all the time, because I found this app through another podcaster called opening my phone called I think it's called the 5-minute journal, and it prompts you every day to write 3 things you're grateful for first thing in the morning. It also, the next 2 things it'll ask you, what's your intent, basically what's your intention for the day, what are some affirmations for the day, and then at the end of the day it invites you to write things that happen during the day that you're grateful for. So you begin the day with gratitude, you end the day with gratitude. And she talks, I told her about this app and she started using it. I'm so bad at being consistent with this stuff. And I thought this was going to be I'm better at doing gratitude that I can either have on my phone or just think about as I'm going for a walk. The writing in a journal just never sticks with me for some reason. I think partly because I have the boys, and so when they wake up in the morning, it's like usually Eli is the one waking me up, so it's not like I'm arising. I don't know, I could get up earlier, but we are working on new habits. Sorry, I'm singing a lot right now. So anyway, this app, she started using it and she's been super consistent with it. So many days that she's been using it. And she's like, I really do feel it. I really do feel the difference. And it's so cool now because I actually see it in her. Like, I see her now talking about things, talking about her own life, talking about what she wants to do with her own business that she has, like talking about next steps for her. And I can see how, obviously that's a combination of a lot of things that brought her to this point in her life. But like, I really think gratitude played a huge role in that. And even the affirmations, just a huge role starting her day with things that she's grateful for, even on the days that are really, really tough. Like starting in that mindset of, even though I feel like garbage right now, maybe I woke up and I feel like garbage, maybe I'm stressed out about some things, there are still things that I know I can be grateful for. And it really does. It sets you up for a day of looking for more things to be grateful for the next day when you write those. So I really do believe in it because I see it. I see it in real life. People talk about it all the time, but I see how it's affected my best friend. And it's, having this conversation with you and talking to her about it all the time, it's just more reminders from the universe that I really need to get on making this a regular habit for me.
It is. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And just getting yourself out of bed. Getting yourself out of bed, it just makes a big difference of feeling like, you're alive, human, energized, and here to do something in the world.
Well, this has been a truly wonderful conversation. I have learned so much, and I know that my listeners are going to get a lot out of this episode. So I really appreciate your time and sitting with you today. But before we wrap it up, I have to ask you the final question that I ask all of my guests. And that is, let's pretend for a moment that it is your last day on earth. You've had an incredibly fulfilling, beautiful, wonderful life. filled with, so many wonderful memories and experiences and joy and relationships and everything that you hoped for to happen. All of your dreams, your goals, they happened. Now it's your last day, and the only thing you can leave behind are 3 lessons that you've learned from your time here on Earth. What are your 3 lessons that you would leave behind?
It's never all or never. Like, it's never all or nothing. Nothing. Yeah, there we go. Nothing is all or nothing. You are both totally in control and not at all in control, right? Totally in control of yourself, your reactions, your energy, who you are, not at all in control of what happens in the world, what happens, how people perceive you, how other people's energy is, how other people feel, and that it's, difficult to live in that fact that you are 100% in control and not 100% in control. And cause and effect. This is an Ayurvedic principle that's so important and so meaningful. And it comes from the larger Vedic teachings of karma, but the fact that everything you do has an effect. And that doesn't mean don't take action. It doesn't mean be scared about, that fact, but it's just that everything you do will have an impact. And so we need to be aware of that fact. We need to think, perhaps of what might the impact of this action be, but definitely we can't pretend that it doesn't have an impact. And I think that's the important one.
That actually gave me chills.
Ooh.
I think I love that. It sounds like, yeah, of course, everything, our actions have consequences or things, but I see that when you were describing that, I was hearing it in a more of a granular way, like literally every move you make, every step you take, every food that you put in your mouth, every phone call, every text message, everything has some kind of effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more intentional we can be with everything that we do and say and take in ourselves is, it's going to be better for us and for all the people that we have an impact on, which is more than we think, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful that, and that there doesn't have to be judgment on it. It's not, so you better make them good ones or you better not.
Right.
But it's just let's just recognize there's going to be effects, positive, negative, probably a combination of the two, right? Everything that's good for someone, might also have a negative impact on someone else.
Yeah.
You gave X person this gift and that meant you couldn't give this other person a gift, right? So everything has an effect. Those ones felt serious, but there we are.
Well, I mean, you were on your deathbed, so
there we go. Yeah.
They were kind of supposed to be, so it's good.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sticking with me here through the technical difficulties. I'm now recording my voice on video on my phone.
Really funny.
So I can remember what I said. But thank you so much for talking to us today. I feel so excited. I really want to learn more about Ayurveda now. And is there anywhere what resources would you recommend folks who are just interested in starting to learn about it and explore? Where would you send them?
I mean, please play around on my Instagram. I put in little tidbits and things there. I'm building up my blog on my website, so there will be more resources to come in the coming weeks. I also really love Banyan Botanicals has they're an Ayurvedic supplement company, and they just have really wonderful tutorials and blogs. So if you are wanting to learn more about the doshas, you want to understand a specific condition, they just have really nice guides through their website. And then, of course, I'll point folks also towards Hale Pule. It's HALEPULE. That's my Ayurveda teacher. I do work for them as a teacher in their training programs. And it's beautiful wisdom and a beautiful community. So always, can recommend them as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you have a good Well, we're recording on Valentine's Day, so I hope you have a lovely Valentine's Day today.
Thank you so much, Emily. Same to you. Thank you for this conversation. It's been really, my heart feels very full. So thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Me too. All right, everybody. We will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, there's a few things you can do to really help your girl out. Please subscribe, rate the podcast, give me a little review. All those things really do help me in a lot of ways. And this year, I'm really trying to expand my reach. I'm trying to get this podcast in front of more people who might need it. My people, our people. So let's keep growing this beautiful community of nice people who are just trying to be their best selves. So if you know someone who might like it, please send them the link, share it in your stories, tag us, which is another thing you can do. Actually, if you're not already, please follow us on Instagram at Mostly All Figured Out. I've actually been very good about posting new episodes every Friday, so you can see who is up. You can get some little sneak previews with some sound bites that we post throughout the week. And it really helps, again, in expanding our reach a little bit and getting us out there in front of more people. So thank you for doing that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting. Love ya.